basically you want to make sure that we have the same goals educationally to make sure that when you start making votes, your votes have our kind of goals as a university in mind. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master of Football, back at it again. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things college football, pro football, Madden, EA college football, anything related to American football, hit that red subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. Also hit the like button too. Again, subscribe, like, helps out the channel a lot. Quest for 1,000. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, guys, here we are. We are in the kind of the dark days of college football right now because pro football is still going on. NBA is kind of heating up a little bit more here, and college football news kind of goes away. The signing period happened. Everything's kind of over. There are a couple all-star games that are coming up that are kind of interesting to watch. I'm going to be doing more NFL draft stuff later on, but it's very interesting. And again, we come back to conference realignment because Dennis Dodd had a story recently that I wanted to go ahead and go over because he articulated a couple of things that's basically the reason why conference realignment happens. So there's a couple different things here. I think I've talked to plenty of people about it. I've talked to my boy Tony Alt more about that in terms of what the institution looks for, the institutions look for when adding another institution to them. And I kind of want to make sure that I level set with a couple of things here because there's a couple of sayings out there that I think we need to address to make sure everybody's on the right track, on the same place. Here we go. Let's get into the article real quick. Here we are on San Diego, California. J.D. Wicker is standing on the top concourse of one of the biggest parties in the country. What else would you call San Diego State's new stadium, which equates to the latest lob pass for what a school hopes is a slam dunk entry into the Pac-12? On its best day, which projects to be every game day, college football is almost a sideshow in the new Snapdragon Stadium. The main event is the craft brew-infused vibe that the San Diego State's athletic director has well crafted. There are more bars in that stadium than there are in most cities, said Aztecs coach Brady Hoke. That isn't entirely why San Diego State enters 2023 as the next hottest realignment candidate, but the elite concessions certainly do not hurt. Taps or no taps, Wicker's vision of a 35,000-seat boutique stadium reflecting the city's culture, history, food, and brew, built on one of the country's most expensive pieces of real estate, was going up regardless. And if you think about this here, they're going to articulate a couple different things here. One of them is the fact that San Diego State has a couple things going for it. Southern California market. There's only 3 teams in Southern California. A lot of people forget Fresno's kind of Central California. San Jose State's in the Bay Area. Cal and Stanford are in the Bay Area too. But if you look at Southern California, it's USC, UCLA, and San Diego State. That's it. USC, UCLA leaving for the Big Ten. The Pac-12 does not have a presence in Southern California. They would with San Diego State being added in here. And it says that right here. At the same time, in and around America's finest city, the plans have realigned. When USC and UCLA left for the Big Ten, San Diego State in a flash became the best, brightest, most geographically desirable school to fill what is now a gaping hole in Southern California for the Pac-12. After years of priming itself in the hopes of West Coast flagship conference would notice, San Diego State doesn't have to flirt anymore. Well, the moment has met SDSU roaring down I-5 from Los Angeles to meet the school on what seems to be Aztecs terms. We went basically from, hey, you're doing a good job, your break is coming, to you're the only team in Southern California that plays FBS football that isn't in the Big Ten. And that's the big aspect behind this. So in conference realignment, there's a lot of things to consider here. So basically, first thing that has to be here is that it has to be the agreement between the institutions to the institutions. So it's important to make sure that the media partners understand what they want. Okay, we want this, we want that, and so on and so forth. However, the number one deciding factor is all those presidents, as you saw before. The Grim Reaper of the Pac-12 conference, Kevin Warren, wanted not only to add USC and UCLA, wanted to add Oregon, wanted to add Washington, wanted to add Stanford and Cal, wanted to take 6 members. So 14, add 6 more, get to 20, potentially add Notre Dame. He wanted to just take over the market. The rest of the institutions, they said, well, that's going to happen. There's some adjustments with our payments here and there. I don't necessarily know if we want to do that. Let's just go with USC and UCLA. Get to 16. We've seen 16 done before. 16 is going to be happening in the SEC too, with Texas and Oklahoma coming over. So Kevin Warren wanted to expand more. The rest of the presidents kind of shot it down, and especially the Ohio State was one of the bigger voices that basically said, nah, 16 is good. We're good with USC and UCLA. We won't add anything more. So the factors that they consider, there's a lot of things that they consider in there. Okay, institutional fit. USC, UCLA, AAU members fit into the Big Ten just nicely. I know Nebraska's not, but Nebraska is, was formerly an AAU member. So again, there's only 65 institutions in the AAU. So add them in pretty easy there. LA has direct flights to almost everywhere in the Big Ten. It's going to be pretty easy there. Okay, top institutions, good academics, people watch them, big market. Remember there. Okay, New York and DC. Okay, Rutgers and Maryland were added in previously. Okay, they already have Chicago. They already have Cleveland. They've already got Minneapolis. Now they have Chicago. Or no, they have New York, Maryland, or DC, and now LA. So again, market matters too. But again, the big factor about that too is also the fact that people watch them. And again, I'm going to go into an article here that kind of breaks down what they actually look for now, because the rules haven't necessarily changed. And again, there's a couple of different conferences that are going in different directions. Some adopt the big market model. Some adopt the people watch model. There's a whole bunch of different things that we can go through. But let's go through an article really quickly here to kind of highlight a couple other things that are going on with the Pac-12 too. So we come over here to sports360az.com, and they talk about SMU and Fresno State coming down here to conference realignment. So there's one perspective here, and again, there's a couple different things. I think this is farther down the line, and again, this video is probably mostly going to be about just making sure we can all get on the same page about what they actually look for. This reasoning is kind of a smaller one. I don't dislike it, but it's kind of smaller reasoning here. It says right here, it has been long held that the biggest impediment to the Pac-12 success in the CFP is defensive line play. What options are out there for recruiting top talent at that position? Is opening new recruiting areas a consideration to the Pac-12? It is, and we can answer that question with 3 letters, SMU, the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Tons of college football players out there. It basically says here, if you look at this here, the hotline tallied the number of blue-chip defensive line prospects, 4- and 5-star ratings in both Texas and California over the past 3 recruiting cycles, according to 247 Sports. The Lone Star has produced 33, and the Golden State has produced just 12. So what they're basically saying there, SMU would be added into the Pac-12 for expanding the recruiting reasons. That's not a bad reason, but I do think that the Pac-12, especially when you think about Stanford, Cal, UW, really, really top-level institutions, they like the fact of getting more defensive linemen, but that's not at the top of their list. It also comes down here and mentions a couple things about Fresno State. So when talking about Fresno State, it says, you think Fresno State to the Big 12 is more likely than Fresno State to the Pac-12? He says, I do indeed. I 100% agree too. And unfortunately, it's a saturation situation for the Pac-12, where Pac-12 adding Boise State, unfortunately, I'm a Boise State fan. I'd love for them to be in the conference. But Pullman, if you fly from Pullman to Salt Lake, you fly over Boise. You don't add a new region per se, although the Pac-12 media situation, we'll get into that later. They've got their own bag of words there. But Fresno State, Boise State, probably Colorado State, more likely to the Big 12, as opposed to going to the Pac-12, just because it gives you new regions. However, because California is so big, San Diego State can still be added to the Pac-12, and it will be considered a reestablishment of Southern California rather than an addition of one. Now, I want to make sure that we share a couple things here. Again, I had mentioned before, SMU, new region, if it would be added to the Pac-12, I actually anticipate SMU will be added to the Pac-12. That's kind of my vote, SDSU and SMU to be added to the Pac-12. But think about this here, and this is from Matt Brown. This is about a year and a half ago. Talking to a couple of experts here, basically says this. The conventional wisdom used to be that college football programs located in urban areas were more valuable to broadcast partners. That's less true now, according to Denninger, who told me that these days it doesn't really matter as much where fans are located, so as long as they tune in and remain engaged. After all, FCS and big G5 leagues don't have a conference TV networks that appear on basic cable packages like the Big Ten or the SEC. There's no inherent bonus to being located, say, near Dallas if you don't have any fans. SMU, again, was in line for a couple national championships, had the death penalty and this and that. They are still a solid institution. And again, if they could turn things around, they're not a bad ad out there. However, talking about the additions to the Pac-12, it's interesting to see what's out there because San Diego State is mentioned. However, Fresno State might be the one. So coming over here to Super West Sports on Twitter, they say the total 2022-2023 football TV viewers, including bowl games. And again, you see the Pac-12 dominates the top here. So we've got USC, Oregon, Utah, UCLA, UW, BYU is going to the Big 12, Washington State, Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and then Boise State, Fresno State, and then Arizona State, Colorado, Arizona, and then San Diego State down here at the bottom. Now, think about this, though. So Boise State, they also played Oregon State, so some of these viewers will bleed over. Fresno State had USC on their schedule. They had Washington State on their schedule, and they had Oregon State on their schedule. Washington State was the bowl game. So you see the fact that, and again, I know Fresno State fans might get mad at me, but I'm thinking that even with this number right here, again, from my perspective, if I'm talking to the media partners, because the conferences have to decide who they want to associate with, and then they have to go to a media partner and be like, what would you give us for this? What would you give us for this? What would you give us for this? The most thing that the media partners like, they like that. They like that. They really like that. They really like that. So going forward, I know that, again, San Diego State is investing in the football program. There's a couple of things there that are important there. The fact that the institution wants to be good at sports. They've got a new on-campus stadium. They have a brand new one, 35,000 seats. It can expand potentially even more, potentially 30, 55, 60. They're willing to do that if they're going to a big conference. They're kind of leaning that way. Really, Snapdragon Stadium looks like a really cool thing. They're investing. They're in a market that is in Southern California. They're a solid institution. Now, the big thing between this is this. See this with SU, San Diego State. So it's Cal State being associated with Cal. So that is a big thing here where the UC system and the Cal State system, if they were to actually merge with each other in a conference, it's a big step forward for the Cal State systems. But again, so if you would assume, though, that if we're talking to the media partners, it would instantly be Fresno State. However, there are many different factors that institutions look into. And despite the fact only $3.5 million for this last season, they're doing a lot of good things out there. They're in a good spot. They really help out the Pac-12 in a lot of different ways. Now, it all just depends on who you ask, because if you look at Mike Oresco from the AAC commissioner, so his big perspective there was, listen, not necessarily his perspective, but Denninger in the previous article. Denninger basically said, as long as people watch, you're attracted to media partners. Mike Oresco took a chance here. So Mike Oresco kind of went with the Kevin Warren perspective. Kevin Warren, Maryland, and Rutgers paid them lower amounts, put them into the Big Ten just because he wanted to have New York and DC as new markets. USC and UCLA, they're additive. Lots of people watch them, and they're in a big market. Nothing to worry about with those schools. However, when you get to the smaller schools and the smaller conferences, you got to get a little more creative. So what do we go with here? So AAC, Mike Oresco, does he go with, Appalachian State, solid program? Does he go with, something like that? Or does he go with Coastal Carolina? He goes with Charlotte, FAU, North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UT San Antonio. So if we recap that, Charlotte, Miami, Dallas, Houston, Birmingham, San Antonio. Big cities, wanting to add those out there. I think what he's saying is we're going to take a chance on these schools. Hopefully they're able to develop into bigger and better things, because he always says right here, our conference is Power 6 goals. They think they're the Power 6. They went big market over necessarily, say, viewership. Again, like as an example, Rice is in a big market. How much of Houston is commanded by Rice being in the conference? That is the bigger question out there that Denninger says, not necessarily a big situation, but Rice, really, really good institution. So thinking about this, most important thing, I'm going to come off the camera for this. For the conference and for the presidents out there, you want a university that has similar goals as you to be making decisions on what your students are doing. Your students are athletes, blah, blah, blah. Basically, you want to make sure that we have the same goals educationally to make sure that when you start making votes, your votes have our kind of goals as a university in mind. If sports is not very important to you, but education is, we want to make sure we're on the same page. If sports is really important to you to the detriment of education, we want to be on the same page. Alabama is not an AAU institution, but they spend more on sports than they do on education. But the rest of the SEC is like, nope, they're additive. We like them. We don't mind the fact that they do that. So Rice coming in, think about that. Rice, Tulane, I'm telling you, Tulane is an interesting one to watch. I actually might have a video about Tulane coming out later on. But if you think about that really quickly, that Rice, great institution, new market, Houston, that we're just about to lose with Houston going to the Big 12. And then, a really good institution for everybody to kind of work with there. So that's how they kind of think out there. San Diego State seems like an obvious choice. I feel like we're just killing time here before they get invited. I also think SMU, new market out there, solid institution, fits into the Pac-12. I think Fresno State, Boise State, Colorado State, if anything's going to happen, they would potentially be additions to the Big 12. UNLV, potentially in addition to the Pac-12. They're in a weird spot because Vegas is kind of its own thing. Remember when the Raiders were moving from the Bay Area to Southern California? Las Vegas wasn't claimed. They moved there, so it's not something that it would be against. However, same situation. It's kind of saturated by the Pac-12. UNLV would probably be a Big 12 ad. But again, way late down the road. I want to make sure I press this for all the Big 12 fans. Nobody's going to add any of those teams. Probably not. But you never know, dude. Again, once the paper gets signed, San Diego State and SMU to the Pac-12, there's going to be some additional movement there. Now, the Mountain West only has 10 teams. There's going to be some more. Again, remember, I always said this before, crap rolls downhill, and we're going to see some more crap, especially because the Pac-12 is at 10 teams right now. It can't stay there. The Big 12 didn't want to stay there either. And then once Texas and Oklahoma left, because they remember that whole situation. So if the Pac-12 stays at 10 teams and then Oregon and Washington leave, the same situation is going to happen there. So they're going to add, because the middle and the bottom of the conference wants security. The top of the conference wants to go to the Big 10, obviously. But I'm telling you right now, that is what's going to happen. All right, guys, we got a great thing about a realignment. There's a ton of debate out there. I just want to make this video really quickly here. Get in the comments right now. San Diego State, potentially SMU to the Pac-12. Are there any other moves that happen from the Big 12? Does the Pac-12 add more? What do you guys think is going to happen? Get in the comments right now and let me know. Guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. That's it for me, guys. I'll see you guys later. I am out.